Hello everyone, welcome back to FairlyDeterminedFM with me. My name is Chris. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be taking a look at 5 things that I would like to see introduced or changed slightly in Football Manager 23. FM23 is coming to the end of its release cycle. We've probably got 3 months left. FM23, dropping early November time-ish. So I think it's the perfect time to just, cast our minds forward a few months and have a think about what we could change for FM23. Let's get started with number 5, the Data Hub. The Data Hub came in FM22. It's a brand new feature and I really like it. I think it was really good. I work with data in my day job. I think the Data Hub does a really good job of taking all that analytical performance data that's in the game already and presenting it in a way that allows us to make tactical decisions based on the data. But some of it is a bit muddy. To illustrate this muddiness, we're just going to jump into the manager's journey. We're going to go back to Napoli and we're just going to have a look at 3 things that I think shows what I'm talking about. So if we take a look at this defending data panel here, we can see in red letters that we make fewer blocks and fewer clearances. So for me, at first glance, that looks like a bad thing, that we're making fewer blocks and fewer clearances on average than the rest of the league. Something must be wrong, right? If we then go and have a look at our defensive efficiency, we can see in nice green, comforting, lovely letters that we've got a quiet, impenetrable defense. So our defense is actually quite good. And then if you go over and have a look at the possession gained data panel, you can see that we make more possession gains than the average team and that we're making those possession gains in these areas of the pitch, primarily just inside our half and sort of just in front of our penalty area. We're not really having to make many defensive actions or anything like that in this part of the pitch. So what that says to me is that we make fewer blocks and fewer clearances because the opposition isn't getting into the positions that would require us to make blocks and clearances. We're winning the ball further up the pitch, our defense is good, and that's why we make fewer blocks and fewer clearances. But none of that's really linked up. You have to pull in different parts of the information to make sense of something that at first glance could be construed negatively. What I'd like to see is if we just expand this panel, there's a lot of white space down here, right? What I would like to see is just some additional data down here. We make fewer clearances than the average team. However, we gain possession higher up the pitch, and then maybe have a link to the possession data where we've got more white space. And in here, we can say we gain most possession just before the halfway line, and then maybe link this to some players and show which players are winning possession the most. So I'd like to see the Data Hub just interlinked a little bit more, just almost like a Wikipedia rabbit hole, like you click on one thing and then there's a link to another bit of data and that takes you to another section. I think it'd be really good. I think it would make the Data Hub more useful than it already is, and it would just sort of demystify some of it, I think. Now, number 4 is Club Admin Management. I couldn't really think of a good title for this section, so that's what we've got. I would really like to run like a proper head coach save one day where all I do is the tactics and the matches. Everything else is done by the staff. Now, you can do this in Football Manager already. You can set your director of football to handle all your signings and your contracts, and your technical director handle like the loans and recruitment of staff and all of that. You can do it. There's a couple of things in the game that don't really make it make sense. Make it make sense? You know what I mean. It makes it a little bit weird, For instance, as a manager, when you join a new club, one of your most common objectives is to work within the wage budget, which is fine. If you've got a director of football and you've assigned them to deal with all the wages, why is it on my head if they sign a player that breaks the wage structure? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem fair. There's also the problem of sometimes the staff that you've hired to recruit other staff will hire people who are basically not suited for the roles. Like a new physiotherapist comes in with a 1 in physiotherapy. Like, what are you... No. Football Manager is a big, complicated game. If you've just come over from FIFA, for instance, and you've never played a Football Manager game before, there's so much to do and it can be overwhelming. I think with a few tweaks, a head coach save would be really viable. And I think for new players, it could act as a more streamlined experience and just allow them to, ease themselves in. And when they're ready, take over some of those responsibilities themselves. Number 3 is scouting. There's 2 changes. This is actually 2 things in one, so bear with me. When you look at the filters that you can apply to this, there's a lot here, right? You can change the age range. You can change the type of agent offers you get. You can say, only show me players that my scouts have recommended to a good level, all that sort of stuff. And then in advanced filters, you've got even more. None of it allows you to say, don't show me players that I can't afford. Napoli's transfer budget next season is going to be £12.5 million. Now, unless I raise that with player sales, I'm not going to be able to afford Andre Onana between £42 million and £62 million from Leicester. It's just not possible. So I would like here a filter that says, just show me play, or a tick, show me players that I can afford. Because all these players are still, in your scouts report, so you can go and find them yourselves. But I think this scouting update here should just be players that you can afford and players that your scouts really think you should have a look at. Number 2 is scout presets. I tend to send my scouts out looking for similar player profile types, usually identical player profile types. Young, EU national, good scouted potential ability. If I'm managing a team with a lot of scouts, that is a lot of clicking, right? What I would like is a preset available so I can set this stuff, the age, the potential ability, what nationalities they are. So I can set that as a preset, and then all I've got to do is select that preset and decide which scout to send and where to send them. It would just make that so much easier, so much more streamlined, so much quicker. Please let me set scout presets in FM23. If nothing else on this list, give me that one, please. Number 2 is player contracts. Player contracts and player negotiations, all that sort of stuff. You can usually finesse your way to getting a signing over the line by adding bonuses and increasing the wages and all that sort of stuff. But recently, there was a really, really good article, I'll link it in the description, in The Athletic, about how modern player contracts are being structured. I won't read the full thing out, obviously, because it's quite long and it's behind a paywall and I'll get in trouble. But here's a little taster of it, and a little excerpt of it, which I think illustrates the kind of changes I think we could see in FM23 in player contracts. A shift towards team bonuses has taken the selfish element away from success. At City, there are no goal or assist incentives added into new contracts, but instead large rewards for team achievement. Failing to qualify for the Champions League would mean pay cuts for Manchester United players. Many have 25% reductions in their contracts, although individuals can negotiate lower rates. Lower down the Premier League table, and clubs such as Southampton and Aston Villa pay out extras depending on league position. I had no idea that City don't pay goal and assist bonuses. That sort of stuff is so ingrained in Football Manager. You don't see contracts without goal and assist bonuses, really. Removing goal and assist bonuses could be a really big change. It could lead to some really interesting contract negotiations. Introducing pay reductions as well based on team performance. So you could sign that superstar on £350,000 a week or whatever it is, on the proviso that unless you make the Champions League that season, you're going to reduce their contract by 30%. It could open up a whole new world. It's like Aladdin. It could open up a whole new world of contract negotiations. Football Manager already has a sort of performance-based bonus system, that bit where you can set low, medium, high, depending on like league and cup competition progress. But it seems a bit one-dimensional when you consider the sort of modern incentives that are in player contracts now. Something else the article mentions is that most teams will set like a goal for the season, not getting relegated, qualifying for the Europa League, finishing in the top 4, winning it, winning the League Cup, whatever it might be. Now, again, you can do that. You set those expectations in the team talk meeting at the start of the season, but it doesn't really do anything except maybe piss off the entire squad if you're not ambitious enough. It'd be really cool if that low, medium, high bit was linked to the expectations that you set as the manager. Say, we want to finish in the top 4. If you finish in the top 4, you're going to get a high bonus. If you don't, it's going to get lower and lower and lower, depending on where we did finish. You could even go one step further and link bonuses and all that sort of stuff to player personality type. A mercenary player, for instance, might want like a really high base wage alongside the team-based bonuses, whereas a driven type player may accept a lower base wage as long as the team bonuses were really, really high. A few more options, I think, around how the contracts are set up would make that side of the game really, really interesting. Number 1, the big one. This is the big one. The dialogue system. Every single Football Manager player, I'm willing to bet, has had the conversation where you go to congratulate a striker on scoring their first international goal and they get up and punch you in the face. Why? What player's going to react like that ever in real life? That does not make sense at all. Some of the interactions in this game do not make sense. It sometimes feels like you're making the right choices in these decisions, but then all of a sudden you've pissed off your 5th choice right back, and now the rest of the squad are furious with you, and team morale takes an absolute nosedive. I don't know about the rest of you, but I do my best to avoid player interactions altogether. You have to do the team meetings, really, but the player interaction ones, I'd get my captain to try and sort it out, or I'll decline it, and very occasionally, you have to deal with it. And it can go horribly, horribly wrong. I find it's a similar situation with the press as well. Like, dealing with the press conferences is so dull. All the questions get really stale, really quick. You're just clicking the answers most of the time, not even looking at the question, because you can guess what the question is based on the answers. Those get really boring. And I end up sending my assistant manager. But my assistant manager will then answer a question and say, yeah, sure, we'll listen to offers for our best player. Absolutely. It's like, no, we won't, you fool. So not only are the press conferences boring, they're dangerous. I don't really know how to make the press stuff better. That's admittedly difficult. You know, there's only so many questions that you can program into a game, right? There's only so many questions that you can think of, really. I think for the player interactions, I think there's a lot that can be done. Now, what I'm going to suggest is going to make it sound like I'm saying that Football Manager should be dialogue manager, and I'm not. It shouldn't be. We're here to win football matches. That's the game, right? Part of being a football manager is interacting with your players and dealing with the personal side of it as well. It's not just the tactical stuff. It's dealing with the players as people. So those squad interactions are a core part of being a football manager. And Football Manager prides itself as being like the most realistic football management sim out there. One thing I think Football Manager could look at is games like Disco Elysium, which is an RPG game that came out a couple of years ago, and it has a phenomenal dialogue system. Now, admittedly, that game is basically dialogue, the game. It is just talking and talking and talking, and it's great. You should go check it out. You even have dialogue with your reptile brain in there. It's crazy. Really crazy, but really fun. It uses a system called micro-reactivity, which, as I understand it, is kind of like a really advanced dialogue tree system, where it remembers choices that you make in conversations like way early on in the game and then throws them back in your face later on. Really cool, really interesting. It's something that maybe Football Manager could put in. I don't quite know how, really. You know, perhaps you deal with a player in your youth system in a particular way, and then later on in the game, they remember that and are more likely to sign for you when they're a big superstar. Yeah, I don't know, something like that. That's just an idea. I'm just throwing it out there. So the other thing I think Football Manager could look at is Dungeons and Dragons, believe it or not. More or less everything you do in D&D is determined by a dice roll. If you're trying to persuade a goblin to drink a bottle of lava, for instance, you're going to have to roll a persuasion check. And that goblin's going to have to roll an opposed persuasion check. 2 dice against each other, really. You roll your dice, they roll their dice. So let's say you've done that. You rolled a 10, the goblin rolled a 10, but you've got +2 in your persuasion. That becomes a 12 and it beats the goblin, and he's drinking lava. Everybody's happy except for the goblin because he's just chugged down some lava. But that could easily, I'm not a game developer, so I don't know. That could be built into player interactions in Football Manager. Let's say that your 5th choice right back has come to you saying he thinks he needs more game time. In the background, when you click your response, your motivation goes up against his determination or his professionalism, and whichever one comes out on top wins. Maybe you would get an advantage on your role because you've been the manager at the club for 20 years, so you're respected and thought highly of more so than your 19-year-old 5th choice right back. Stuff like that I think could make the player interaction system really, really interesting, really, really unique and meaningful. And I'd love to see it. I just want the dialogue system, I think, needs some work. And I think those 2 things would be really cool. There you go. There's my 5 things that I would like to see changed or updated in Football Manager 23. What did you think of the list? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Cheers. Take care. Bye.